Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. Tonight, we're going to be doing some live Q&A as well as an open panel for the second hour. But I'm going to pass it over first to Spartan Grown to introduce himself.
Thank you, Jack. I am Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram, Spartan Grown, all one word with no spaces, or you could shoot me an email, spartangrown@gmail.com, and I can help you with all of your growing or lighting questions.
As I was just writing to tag us with your questions in the YouTube live chat because I want the people to participate tonight. Make sure they tag us on YouTube if they're there and participate and doing all that good stuff. But I want to go ahead and remind everybody to click over to the live chat if you're already here so you can see all the messages. And I'm going to also welcome in Dr. MJ Coco. Welcome back for another week.
Hey, thank you very much, Jack. I am Dr. MJ Coco. For those of you that don't know me, I wrote the book Coco for Cannabis back in 2018. Started the website Coco for Cannabis, and now I do make most of my money consulting for commercial cannabis cultivation operations around the country and around the world.
Very good and very happy to have you back. And next up, we've got Noah the Grower.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Noah the Grower. I'm a medical grower for the last 15 years in the Pacific Northwest. Always have fun hanging out. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you back. And since we don't have any in the live chat just yet, I did get a question in the DMs. And because I have cats, I guess I have some ideas and feedback, but they have some earth boxes or city pickers or situation like that where they kind of have like a raised bed style planter box. And their cat is starting to dig into it or even use it as like a litter box situation. So I have some ideas, but I'm curious if anybody else on the panel has some ideas that might be you know, as easy as like keeping the cat out of the room. Or in my case, I have tents and I keep the tents shut. And believe it or not, the new tents, like the double lined tents, the even the budget VivoSun or whatever, they're so thick that my cats will scratch on it with claws, and there's not pinhole light coming out. Like I'm sure after a certain amount of time, eventually they'll break through that second layer. But like I've had it for about a year now, and I have lights in there blasting, and I have it on at night and don't see any light coming out, which is actually shocking. The thickness of that mylar and the exterior build quality has really gone up because I used to get VivoSun in 2017, and you might get one with a pinhole from out of the box. It was just a little bit thinner material. It was highly reflective, but it was not as thick and durable as they are now. It literally like is wild. But getting back to the question, I wanted to maybe I'll pass it first to Spartan Grown to ask, do you have any thoughts or ideas or comments on how to maybe prevent cats from getting into the grow or digging up your city pickers or using them as litter boxes?
I'm probably not going to be the most popular answer, but man, I've always had a strict no pets in the grow at all because they're such a huge vector for pests. And if a big ass cat or dog or whatever is getting into your grow, you've got some problems IPM wise. Like if an animal can get into your grow and you don't want it to, then you got to shore up that grow because you're going to have all kinds of pests just being able to waltz in there too. And it's just going to be a problem that you will always be facing. So I would be pushing more towards no, find a way to make sure that they don't even have access.
That's a great point. This, funny enough, it was less of a question and more of a, now that I'm looking through the DM, it came with a solution. And the next photo, I was a little confused by it. It was a great value, everyday clear forks. And so they bought themselves like a 100 pack of plastic forks and they have stuck them in the tops of their soil across the entire beds so that the animals cannot go in there and trounce. It's almost like if you ever seen like the bird spikes on the sides of like a
Yeah.
pool or like a balcony so that birds can't land on there. It's basically like they're aerating their soil a little bit and spiking it with a whole bunch of forks. So that was their solution. I was thinking when I initially read that question that like maybe like a chicken wire or like a baby gate type thing that you could lay over top of it or put in front of it like in the room to make it so that it's not accessible in some way or another. But yeah, it's an interesting problem and an interesting solution that they've come up with here. Um, like I said, my solution was just tents, and that's been working well for me. If I open them up and am not conscientious of it, they can walk over and start to, start chowing on the lower leaves, and they will do that. So I tend to pull off a few of the lower leaves and just give them to them to entertain them off to the side, and then I can have my workspace a little bit more dedicated to myself. But I'm curious if Noah the Grow has ever had to worry about dogs or cats or any other pets or animals getting into his grow space, and if you have any creative solutions for something like this.
Not necessarily. Okay, I kind of follow the Spartan rule. I tried to keep my dogs out when I had them. One of them made it to 10, one of them made it to 13, but we recently just got a cat. We feed a lot of like feral cats around here, and then one of them, like this little one, she got like a hole in her, and then like I just like felt bad for her. I let her in the house, and she like thrived like a hole like the size of a quarter, and like we were like we could not afford them. They want like $800 to the vet. I was like, I can't afford that. We just put colloidal straw and the cat recovered. But now it lives here, and it's like it's a hybrid. So it lives outside and it lives inside. And ironically, it likes to go into my wife's flower beds and my strawberry beds and use a litter box. And I have tried a few different things. The idea that we're doing right now with our Daphnes is hazelnut shells. So they're kind of organic. The cat kind of seems like she's kind of staying away from it so far. I tried putting like flat like rocks like on the top, but like I said, I mean, if I had a cannabis plants outside, I would probably experiment with that. I wouldn't want to bring anything like that into my indoor grow. I usually just keep the door shut and have had pretty good luck with that so far. But the hazelnut shells is the one that seems to be working the greatest so far.
I like that as a physical barrier solution, kind of like the forks, but without having the excess plastic. And it seems like it's something that could act almost as like a mulch layer or just like a weed barrier or weed suppressant. I've seen people even use like rocks a lot of the time as like it could be lava rock or pumice, or even just like if you go to the Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever garden center, they just have like big bags of rocks. Funny enough, there's this comedian, Cam Patterson, who he's like, I'm not autistic, but I like rocks. And he said that he goes to the Lowe's and Home Depot and buys like these 50-pound bags and just like feels around until he finds one that he likes the feel of. And now that he's got so many fans from his comedy, he like sells those to people at shows for like $10-20. And the whole entire bag itself is like $10 or $20 because it's just garden stone, right? But interesting and funny situation there. But getting back on the grow side of things, I'm curious if Dr. MJ has any creative solutions for dealing with the potential peskiness of a cat getting into the grow space and wanting to use the soil beds as litter boxes.
I think I'm not going to come up with anything nearly as clever as Noah's hazelnut shells. I think that that's awesome to kind of think about things like that and creating those natural barriers. I'm with Spartan on this one. I don't want animals in the grow room. And even people getting in the grow room can be problematic in terms of vectors, as he's talking about. But animals, and not even vectors for like pests and stuff, just vectors for cat hair. I mean, the cat is a really good vector for bringing cat hair into your grow room that then is going to get stuck to your buds. Like, you got to realize everything gets stuck to the buds in an indoor grow like that. So yeah, you try to run a pretty clean facility. And I know people are used to thinking about their pets as being sort of clean, but that seems like a big red flag. I'm also, often thinking about commercial settings where you really have tight testing protocols that you have to be able to survive. And like, you're not going to get animals into the grow room and still get through your TYM testing. So
We've talked about trimming causing the TYM to go up too much. If somebody doesn't have a mask on and they're breathing on it too much, it can increase that TYM, the total yeast and mold. And it's like dogs and cats, as much as I love them, they are exposed behind animals. And imagining if it was like a human, it'd be like a bunch of people walking around with shorts that were bottomless chaps with the hole exposed. And that is going to also cause the TYM levels to go up, because if it's exposed and not covered, then, there's going to be more in the environment that you're working in and doing anything in. So it just makes sense from a practical standpoint. And even outdoor, everything sticks to it.
And to your point, Jack, I think a tent is a really excellent solution to this. And it sort of speaks to the fact that the grow tents are functional pieces of equipment that we're using. They're not just sort of like a place to do this stuff. Thinking about how they can serve as an IPM barrier, as a cat barrier, and maybe owners of cats that want to be growers need to think about things like canvas that's thick enough in the grow tent to, the cat can scratch on it without creating holes, like you're saying. So, but grow tents, it also sounds like this grower may be operating outside of a grow tent. So at the home grow scale, I think it makes so much sense to put your tents in a confined space like that, where you can dial in managing a smaller environment, where you can trap your light and make sure that all your photons are going to use growing plants. It makes an IPM barrier, a light barrier, and a climate barrier that really can help you as home growers be more successful and have an easier time of it, and a cat barrier. So
They are, to their credit, doing well in the fact that I see this grow space. I don't didn't ask if they're going to be used or not, so I'm not going to put their name out there or anything to like expose them. But they have white walls, and white is highly reflective, so at least they're on that front, and they're spacing the plants in a way and the lights in a way that it looks like they're using their space well. They kind of look like they have like a smaller room or closet or something on the side that is dedicated to just plants. But
right.
I agree with what you were saying in terms of it being a tool. And one of the most major benefits of a tent is being able to control the environment. Like I used to be in a trailer, it was like 400 square feet. And treated the whole entire trailer like a lung room. I had fans in the windows and I could pull in cool air and cool down the trailer, which would cool down the tent. And it was relatively easy to dial in with a little bit of, focus and effort with, hygrometers and whatever throughout the area. You could get an idea of where it needed to be. Now I'm on a second floor where I've got probably 20-foot ceiling, and the dynamics and the heat exchange of the environment are completely different. And if I were to try and grow like he's growing in this environment, it would be impossible to regulate the relative humidity because it's so much more ambient air. There's just like a big, huge pocket of empty space above where the plants would be. And even if I had the light pressed down and even if I put stuff around them, like getting the humidity up to where it needs to be is so much easier. And a tent, like if you could, just as an experiment, if you set up a tent and close yourself into it for like 3 minutes with no ventilation, you will literally see the walls like beat up with moisture from your sweat because it's going to get so hot and balmy in there in such a short period of time if you don't have good circulation. But it just goes to show that like it traps that moisture and that heat in there really well. So you can then dial up like how much circulation do I need? How much airflow do I need? And you can get it to the point where it's like I only pull out however much. And at this point, it's automated. I have it on a VivoSun little whatever the grow hub, and I just set the relative humidity targets, and it stays between here and there, and it just only turns on when it gets to a certain level. And there's a bunch of Inkbird and everybody else has these different things to set that. But I think a tent makes that infinitely more achievable without necessarily needing like a huge AC running or dehumidifier and humidifier all pumping back and forth when you can kind of just work with what your environment's giving you. At least in Southern California, I know I'm admittedly very, very spoiled in the environment in that regard, but at least here it makes life really easy to have a tent. But I think we also got another comment on going back. Just they said they in their first grow they learned real quick. Not even from an IPM perspective, but this is a bro Brandon 420 says, I let my cat in my grow when I first got him and learned real quick, I can't get shit done with him in there. So unfortunately, he isn't allowed in there. So another practical reason for not having your animals in your grow room, if they're like his cat or my cat, I have a Persian Maine Coon mix, Tallulah, and she's obsessed with me. She'll literally, it's like a herding dog. She like weaves in between my legs. If she wants attention, she'll just start like meowing at me and like jumping up and down on my leg and wants me to pet her and give her attention. So if you can't get stuff done, then that's going to make it a lot more difficult to, keep the plants healthy and happy. And so more reasons to keep the cats or dogs away from the grow space, because cats are not unique in the fact that they can. Funny enough, I just saw a lizard. Brandon had a bearded dragon that ate some of his seedling heads. He's like, I just came in here and I was like, what ate the top of these seedlings? Like, what could have done it? And the seedlings were all pushed over and like just the top was bit off. And he's like, what kind of pest does this? Like, and then he like pans around the little bed, and then you just see this little bearded dragon like looking back at the camera like, who, me? It was just so funny. I'm like, oh man, that's a bummer. But and then I said innocent until proven guilty, so we don't know that it was him, but strongly suspect. that it was actually the bearded dragon. So any pets can actually be pests within the grow room if you're not careful, if they're unattended and they get hungry or whatever. I've even seen like what were considered IPM benefits, like rove beetles or whatever, that could take out and help break down the soil and things like that, end up taking out seedlings if they're too small and not developed. So that's like the one time that they could not be a beneficial insect for cannabis
Hmm.
generally. It's all about balance and timing, though, I guess. So with anything,
Get
if you
some pet Californicus mites and just raise them in your grow tent. You'll be fine.
then you have yourself a little side business of selling them to all the growers that do inevitably get pests from one thing or another. So it's a constant battle. But I know even like when people try to use a bank plant, Hoda Herb mentioned that he grew the explosive ember peppers and or maybe he bought them from a nursery because he wanted to use them as a host plant for his Swarovski eye or whatever it was that fed on
Mhm.
that pollen that wouldn't pollinate a cannabis plant. Well, sure enough, he ended up getting pests from the pepper plants that he
Oh,
got from the
right.
nursery. Not so like I don't know if the Swarovski were equipped to deal with whatever he ended up getting from that pepper, but it was just like a perfect example of like how IPM is not a one size fits all, and it really comes down to how you implement it. Because like Brandon and Matthew were implementing this like Swarovski explosive ember pepper combination really well with cannabis here on the West Coast in California, and like had great success, demonstrated it, documented it, and it's like one of the first times I think Matthew had said it was documented with cannabis, blah blah blah. Really cool stuff. Not to like belittle it, but I don't want to drag it out too long. Then Hoda tried it because he was interested in looking at the science and this and that, and it just didn't work out for him. So, and not to say that it can't ever, but in his first go at it, it came with more headaches than it was necessarily worth. So, it comes down to how we go about doing anything. You know, we could all want a GG4 cut, but if you get it from the sketchy dispensary down the road, it might come with pests or disease. Where if you get it from somebody that is your grow me, I would still quarantine it and check it and keep it separate for weeks and spray it and dunk it and do all the necessary things when you're taking any cut in. But I think you're less likely to get something nasty from a dedicated home grower a lot of the times.
I've also seen so much evidence, more than I would have suspected coming at this from sort of a hard biology perspective of epigenetic drift in moms. So, how the moms are taken care of and grown out, and the successive generations of clones are cut off of them. Like GG4, the one you just brought up, right? Like to really get a GG4, it's been a clone for 20 years now. A whole generations of mothers being cloned off of grown up, cloned off of grown up, cloned off of grown up. How that's been done, how they've been grown, how they've been stressed, will really affect sort of what you're getting there too. So where you get your clones from, I don't know. I'm just inspired to say that's a slightly different point than the one you were making, Jack. But
No, it's just it's
it's
pertinent though.
something that's been really pronounced lately, and I've noticed it sort of coming up more and more often.
More studies actually confirming what was bro
Okay.
science. We thought it was
Yeah,
epigenetic drift was not a thing, and now there's stuff saying that maybe for one, it might not be exactly that, right? There's other a term, somoclonal variation was another one I heard floated
sure. Well,
around.
right, we just mean that the genetics continue to change despite clonal propagation.
Yes.
So even though you're having asexual reproduction, the genetics aren't perfect copies of them, and certain mutations that take place during an individual plant's life end up getting passed on through clonal propagation, so that mutations can accumulate just through cloning in a way that's almost similar to how mutations can accumulate through sexual reproduction.
And
Um,
I
yeah,
look at
and
it
it
like,
definitely makes them worse. Every single time it makes them worse. It doesn't seem to ever make them better, but that's kind of a different sort of law of nature.
and it's
it
almost
is
like it with human DNA was like we have this wild amount of DNA that's essentially switched off, but an
Yeah,
environmental
non-coding
factor.
DNA.
Yeah, but an environmental factor or something will flip that switch on. And I figure that's the same way with these plants. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, and then it becomes flipped on, and then the plant grows out with that expression, and then you clone that, and it reliably sort of starts getting passed on. And now a change that happened kind of keeps getting passed on. It just seems to happen for plants that get stressed, for cannabis plants that get stressed, their clones become problematic. And I've had clients that have had to circle back and try to rehunt original cuts because they've effed up their moms. And no matter what they do now, they can't get the same testing numbers that they used to reliably get, right? So, they had some stressful event happen in the mom room and they know what it was. It's usually some sort of pest outbreak that really stresses the moms. And then suddenly they're growing out a strain that used to be testing in the low 30s, for THC percentage, is testing in the mid-teens. And even after you get the plant healthy again, regrow a new mom, take a new cut off the healthy part of the plant, regrow a new mom all healthy, it's still testing in the mid-teens. And that's just like the one trait that's really easy to track because we test it every single time.
It's also one of the
yeah,
hardest
that
things for
kind
the
of thing
plant to
happens
produce.
more than I thought it would. I would have thought we'd be able to recover the moms after these stress events, and sometimes you can't.
With
It's
a tissue
interesting.
culture, I think maybe that would be maybe the best bet at this stage in the game. Maybe tissue.
And there's multiple things you can
Perhaps
do
it just
with that.
depends on where the genetic change took place.
Where and how and why. Like there's a multiple things that you kind of brought up that I kind of thought about as you're talking about that. First of all, the grow off is just like an example of like where there isn't even necessarily drift. Like the same mother took 100 clones, all of them relatively healthy, sent out to 100 different growers, and they get 100 different expressions because one is in Humboldt County, one is in San Diego County, one is in Santa Barbara, one is in East San Diego County versus on the coast of San Diego County, and they all express very different, like terpene tests, cannabinoid tests, all across the board from like 15% to like 35% and like 3% terpenes to like 0% terpenes. And it was really interesting. They've done it in multiple cities and states and things like that, giving out quote unquote the same clone and had it expressed differently. Even in my own personal anecdotal experience, Eagle Gardens, I sent him a J1 cut, which was really like piney out here, and Jack Herrera, skunk #1. And when he got it, it smelled like grapefruit when he grew it, or not grapefruit, dragon fruit in Michigan. He said it smelled just like purely like dragon fruit. And so that was totally different. Speaking of tissue culture, I got my GG4 from Tiki Cuts because he does I think he said every 2 months, he's tissue culturing all of his mothers, and they have like a cleaning process that they can do as well. But there's also like hormone treatments that you can do with tissue culture. All tissue culture uses some level of hormones to maintain what they're doing. You can make them grow slow, you can make them grow fast, you can make them grow lanky, make them grow really, really tight internode spacing. There's different recipes for the agars and things like that. So there's lots of different groups now doing it with cannabis successfully. Like I'm seeing people rescuing 20, 30, 40-year-old seeds and sprouting them. Even, fresher seeds sometimes, but maybe they got hot or something and didn't sprout for people for one reason or another. But getting them into that sterile medium is a possibility to get people potentially growing those things out again. Spartan Grown copied a question from APM who said, can you guys talk a little bit about AC, using portable AC? And can you explain a sealed room and how that works with exhaust or no? Portable AC inside the grow, ducted out. I'm in my closet. So I think I might have flubbed that up a little bit, but maybe you guys have some thoughts on.
I can take that if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
A portable AC is really helpful if you have a double vented portable AC that can exhaust the hot air created by the AC. It'll be much more efficient that way, and you can locate it inside your grow space. Otherwise, I would probably just use it in the lung room, and so the room attached to the closet, and figure out an air exchange between the closet and the room that's outside the closet. It's hard to manage the single vented, so the kind that just sit there and they don't exhaust the hot air. It's hard to manage them in a small space.
I would argue that your second idea is by far, in my opinion, the way I would do it, especially because a standard window unit will always kick even that double one. My brother-in-law, he's had a lot of experience with this, and you can get a really good window unit, like 10,000, 12,000 BTUs, set it up permanent, and then just get like some type of what I do is I have an exhaust fan out like through the, because I was using a hood. But I guess with an LED, you can still do an exhaust out, and then just have like a little like air vent that's like, there's a way to like get it to where, like we did it with like just like 2x4 or even 1x1. I can't remember what it was. It's been so long ago, but just had a little like air in, and then just suck that cold air in, and the temperature was always like 70, 72, whatever you want. And it's just, we did it in my bedroom, same thing, closet. I did that that's how I bought my house. So you can
Yeah.
do a lot of different things. But he got one of those ones you're talking about, and with the double vents, and it didn't work very hot for him. And then he'd ordered the other one. If you have a decent exhaust fan, it'll actually pull that hot air that's exhausted into your AC back into the room. If you have an exhaust fan powerful enough, even like a not very powerful one, it will at least pull some back and also make your AC work harder. The other way that you said is it's superior, in my opinion.
I agree. I think it's really tough in a closet to create a true sealed space, which would mean that you're not exchanging air with a lung room. If you're growing in a tent, almost everybody uses a lung room, whether they call it that or not. They're ventilating the grow tent. Some of you will maybe exhaust it straight outside or exhaust into another room, but you're pulling air in from the room, or you're ducting air into the tent from someplace and sort of exchanging it. So yeah, I totally agree. Now, condition the lung room and then use an exhaust fan in the closet to regulate how much of that air is basically exchanged between the closet, which is creating heat and humidity, and the lung room, which is creating cool, dry air. And so you exchange that in. One thought on sizing these: you probably don't have a crap ton of lights in a closet, but you would start with whatever your room is and whatever your climate is in terms of sizing a window unit. If it's just for like a bedroom that's going to be usually just cooling that one bedroom, you might only get, like 5,000 BTUs. A pretty small unit would be sufficient in there, but you're going to want to get sort of step up that sizing to account for using it to cool off your grow. You can do that based on thinking about using it for the heat. And we've often talked on this show, I've talked a lot about the BTU formula for how to sort of calculate that. But the other thing you have to think about is your AC is really going to be useful in this situation to dehumidify the air, because your grow kicks off a lot of humidity. So we're not just using the humidifier or the air conditioner to cool the air. You've got a big latent and a sensible load operating on your air conditioner, because there's a lot of humidity. And that humidity that's in the air will phase shift. It'll go from water vapor into water, which creates a lot of heat, basically, that has to be absorbed by the AC. So as that water is kind of falling out of the air, the air conditioner has to do work just to do that, and it's no longer doing work in cooling your environment. So I would do the BTU formula, which is the total number of watts that you're running in your grow. That's your lights, your fans, any other equipment that you have on there. Add up the total maximum watts that they get. If you just want to know the BTUs they're going to kick off, you're going to multiply that by 3.41, and all of that electrical equipment, that wattage times 3.41 is the BTU per hour. Sizing an air conditioner is awesome because they're sold in BTU per hour. So if you have like 1,000 watts going into that closet, then you have like 3,410 BTU, and you'll need to get an air conditioner that's at least 3,410 BTU more than you would otherwise need to get to cool that room based on the size of the room and the climate that you're in. But the 3.41 is just taking the air conditioners working to cool the air. Since it's also working to dehumidify the air, you want to add about another 50% onto that. And in that case, where you're running 1,000 watts in that closet, you're going to need about another 5,000 or 5,500 BTU of air conditioning to really totally compensate for that amount of heat. Just some thoughts.
I think that's why it leads to being so much more efficient oftentimes to run a lung room, air condition the space that the humans are living in to a comfortable level. your wife and kids and family and cats and dogs are all going to be happier because you're running AC, and it's AC versus not having AC. So everyone that is living there will be probably thankful for that. And on top of that, the plants benefit because it just gets piped in. And the main draw, I think, for a lot of people in a lot of places is the dehumidification as much as the cooling effect, because it's just so hard sometimes to pull that RH out of there. But I see Spartan Grown updated a couple extra things like
He
single
says,
duct.
yeah, I'm just reading the comments too. Go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
Did you have any? I was curious if Spartan wanted to jump in on this topic in general. Did you have
Well,
any
yeah,
thoughts on that question?
let me read the last thing. The last couple things. He says he's got portable AC inside the grow, ducted out into a closet. Heat from the AC is ducted outside, in his case, through one duct. The long room is too big to cool down. It's his room. Heat's ducted out to outside window from AC. I haven't sealed it yet, but I'm thinking to with some foam boards to dry in after. Help with insulation.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Isn't that dehumidifier going to create negative pressure in that closet? I mean, I'm pretty sure
And
you have
it's
a hard time sealing that double vented air conditioner in, because it's going to be pumping out the hot air from the air conditioner, and that's going to create negative air pressure in that tent, or in that closet in this case, which it needs to be replaced.
it's going to be using his room as a long room, whether he likes it or not, is what you're
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
basically be using his room as a long room, whether he wants it or not, because he's going to be pumping air out of
It
the
will force
closet.
itself in to replace itself to prevent like an explosion
Right.
from happening.
Right. Yeah, it just all implodes on itself.
And the fact that you can't get a room cooled, I mean, how big a room are we talking here? I mean, you can get a 10,000 BTU window unit, just a standard winter unit, and cool a very large room, a living room almost, pretty efficiently. And yeah, I mean, if you're doing 1,000 watt, like you said, like I never did 1,000 watt in the closet. We did a 600 watt, but
He's saying like for total everything, so like
yeah,
maybe 600 for the light,
no,
two
no,
or
I'm
three
not a
hundred in
jack.
fans.
Doc said that. I'm just saying that that's still, that could be a little bit more, problematic. 1,000 watts. I think you're probably better off doing the 600 watts. LED would obviously be somebody else's, strong float, not mine. But I just use that. I mean, but yeah, you're gonna need to cool that other room somehow, and it's not as hard as you think it is. As far as that memory foam thing, that's exactly what I did in my have in my flower room right now. When I go out there, I'll show it, and that is quite efficient. Because I have an old school like metal window there that I didn't replace, so I just put like like a sheet of plywood up, like just kind of screwed it right into the thing as more of a security, and then that was letting heat and cold in, and we put that styrofoam thing up, and that is quite effective. That will work.
Right. So Agundis says now that he has an intake fan pulling air from my room, which you have to, but that means that you have a ventilated grow space. It's not a sealed space in that case. You would, to do a true sealed space would be to seal that off. So if air is coming in from the long room, it might as well be conditioned air. I agree with Noah that it shouldn't be too big for you to just cool that whole room.
Yeah.
Plus, when you look at the cost difference of window units to the portable units, I mean, I think that alone, you're going to be able to upsize like 3 times just and stay at the same price range, because those portable double vented units are expensive.
I was going to make that point. I was like, if you have the ability to use a window unit, that is ideal by far, even money wise, because if you could take that same money that you're going to spend on that portable unit, and it's gonna go so much further in a window unit. And I'm just gonna agree with you guys more. It was like, yeah, you just have to cool the space that it's in. And it's just like, think of the air as volume of water, even. Like your room is the pool, and the grow space is the kiddie pool. And if you take the pool and you get that to a comfortable, whatever it is, 70 degrees, and you doesn't matter what temperature that kiddie, you get boiling water in that kiddie pool, and you put it in that pool, it's going to get to that 72s really fast. So what I'm saying is if you can get the outside, the biggest volume of air to the correct temperature that you want to hold, when you exchange air with that room, you could exchange air all day long with that room if you have to, and it's going to keep that rock solid temperature that you need because you're exchanging air with this gigantic pool of the ideal air instead of trying to just have the unit sitting in there and turning on and off all day long every single time it's 3 degrees off. It's just that thing runs far less the way it's suggested when you take it out of the room and it conditions that big volume. It just runs far less.
When I first started growing, I had a 600-watt standard bedroom closet, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to do this for fun. I'm just going to do this for an experiment. I'd experimented a few times before that, but a very close person to me helped me set it all up, gave me some good strains, and I don't know if it's as good as the weed that I can grow now, but it was very, very good, especially 15 years ago. The value of weed was much, much higher. My very first grow, I think I got like off a 600 watt, I think I got like 14 ounces. I was like, what the hell? That was a lot back then. And of course, obviously, I couldn't smoke that much in 2 months. So, it was great. The weed was really good. Like everyone was like, I cannot believe this is your first grow. And I just listened, and I didn't have access to a show like this. I just had to kind of bro science it out. But yeah, you should be able to get a pretty happy median with a closet grow. It's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, I also like, just to go to Spartan's point, if you do have that large volume of air that is at the ideal temperature or very close to it, as long as you have good intake ability to swap out there's like calculations you can do. It's like cubic feet per minute or hour or whatever you want to do per your grow space. You can figure out how large of a exhaust fan plus an intake fan you need to guarantee that you're consistently kind of rinsing out the grow space with fresh, clean air that's cooler and just keeping it kind of in the ideal environment.
I want to just say something about his targets. He says here that his room's about 78. This is Fahrenheit, obviously. With the house closet is ideally trying to get a little lower, 70 to 74. And my question is, why? I mean, is this nighttime? Are you trying to bring out colors in your crop? Um, I want to run, and assuming you're not using supplemental CO2, you're hovering somewhere around 400 or 500 parts per million in terms of CO2. I want to be at 8 degrees.
Yeah, are you at
I wanna
HPS
be-
lighting or something? That's the only thing I
Yeah,
can think.
I want to be warmer than that.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
for what it's worth. Yeah, under
That's why-
HPS lights, I guess maybe 78, 79. Under LED with supplemental CO2, I want to be like 82. 80 is fine. There's never a reason that I want to be at 70 degrees unless it's nighttime on the crop.
Now he's saying
Just for
for
what that's
drying.
worth.
He's saying for drying now. I'm
Oh, if you're doing something for drying, that's a totally different situation.
yeah, yeah.
That's a totally different situation. So are we talking about creating a dry space in the closet, or are we talking about creating a grow space in the closet, or a combo?
Yeah, maybe
That's
it's a
what I'm
flex,
saying. I mean, I understand
either or.
people that have to do it, they don't have a choice, but that's one of the things what do you call it? A pet peeve of mine in the grow is like give your plants the respect of a dry room or a dry space or something. Don't I mean, I know old school like
Even
trim
in herbs
bags
now.
and shit, but come on, we've progressed a little past that. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'm like, give the girls it doesn't have to be huge. You can make it
I like a
small.
separate space more for the
You can make it,
cleanliness.
you can make it smaller. Yeah, you can make it smaller, which makes it easier to control temperature and everything and humidities. But
I
man,
had a
just
grower
a little
once
closet.
that was worried. He lived with a roommate. He didn't tell his roommate he was growing, and he managed to like get by this with like ducting it outdoors and using carbon filters and air filters in his room and all this. And it's coming up to harvest time, and we're all like, dude, what are you gonna do? Like, it smells so much at harvest time. Your roommate, you're totally gonna be busted. The dude went into the tent, like zipped himself in the tent, harvested the plants in the tent, hung them all up in the tent, and did like the whole thing in the tent. Is because he was so worried about, and it just I mean, it wasn't fun. You can kind of imagine, but yeah, so how's that,
That's a
Spartan? You didn't
commitment
even
right there.
like Vince didn't
That
even get
sounds
to
like
leave.
Anne Frank of growing.
It's the
That's
what?
That's like the Anne Frank of growing or some shit. I don't know. That's brutal.
it's like, I mean, like I said, I've seen that's a perfect instance of I can understand you have to do it. You make it happen.
Right.
I respect for that, but let's not make that a common practice. Let's get out of the situation. And
How
let's
bad is the roommate that we can't talk to him about potentially having a couple plants? I did have a roommate in college that was not happy about cannabis in there was like five of us living in a place, and one of the guys was potentially maybe, making a little bit of an income from having cannabis around, so they weren't the happiest about that. And
Mm.
so I guess some people, are a little bit more anti-cannabis, either, selling or use or whatever, growing in this case. Some people consider that like it's like a way harder offense in a lot of places. Like it's manufacturing or whatever, cultivation, distribute. Like it always comes with like bigger charges than just like if you were smoking a little bit of it, like outside on your own time or in your bedroom. But I can kind of see how a roommate would be concerned, but at the same time, it depends on what state you're in. Maybe know your rights and your laws. It's like if you are doing it legally, like if you have a medical card or if you're in a state that allows adult use that you can just grow, it's like, hey, I you can maybe break it down slowly with them.
I think in this case, this was years ago too, but I think that there was a real concern the roommate would just turn him into the cops. Like
Uh,
it was not a legal thing, and the roommate was not down with it. And so,
Usually you go to that extent when it's coming to going to prison or
right,
not, right? It's like I'd
right.
rather be at home trimming in my own little tent than in a jail cell. So I would go to that extent too if I had to in 2026. But thank goodness for myself in California, we're not at that space yet. You never know. They'll keep fighting, just like a lot of things. They'll keep rolling laws back if we're not diligent about it. So
I remember that another time that we had a user that was in New York City and growing in a tent in their apartment in New York City, and their landlord was coming for an inspection and they didn't know what to do with their plants. So they put their plants in a baby stroller and just walked through the park for like 3 hours with their plants in a baby stroller because they didn't know where else to go. And like they didn't have any place to take their plants. Yeah.
I've heard
That's
people
fun.
rent U-Hauls for that situation sometimes. They just
Right.
throw them all in
I,
the back of a U-Haul and drive around for a little while, park it
I've never
somewhere.
heard about the U-Haul. That's interesting, but I know people that have taken it over to their neighbors. A couple of houses over, a friend. I know
Yeah.
people that have. I know people that, because same thing, landlord. I know people that have like put it in their cars, work trailers. Oh yeah, I had a friend who that they literally just every like I don't even know, like maybe every like 6 months a year, the landlord would come in and like, oh yeah, I got it. Dude, another thing they used to do was put up temporary like grow rooms, and then the landlord would come over and they like just kept tearing them down. And I kept telling them like, just get a tent, just get a tent. And then finally they ended up getting a tent because it was like a whole ordeal. Landlords come in like, it's gonna be like a 3 day thing. I was just like, dang. So yeah, that is a real thing. I know someone who went through that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Good times.
When the value of the crop was higher, but making it happen was a lot more difficult. So I came along with all that bullshit we had to go through. And that's where the value came, right? It
That's
was
the
in the
risk
being
reward.
overregulated.
Exactly.
I'll
I
tell you one
actually
thing that
prefer
I
now.
want to go circle back if we can to what Dr. Koch was talking about with the genetic drift or the whatever. One thing that I always did, and I learned from I can't even remember who it was now, but
DJ
the
Short.
old maybe DJ Short. This is old heads around here told me, and they maybe learned it from DJ Short, but they always told me to take clone, even if you're an indoor grower, take your clones and get them outdoor and let them grow outdoor in the summer for 2 or 3 months. And then this time in July, next couple weeks or so, take your cuts because you're still in veg and bring those back inside. And those always seem to be like reinvigorated or stronger in some way. And it's just as much as we know
Mm.
about this plant and light and everything else, we don't know everything that's going on out there. Just get them in the native soil and the native light, and it's amazing with these plants. I mean, they just always seem like if you grow outdoors and just it's crazy. Maybe I'm just blessed where I live, but I can put a plant in the backyard and literally do nothing else. Never even have to water it. and it just fucking takes off and it just loves life. And so I do that every year. I try to get my plants, any of them that I'm like worried about, like this one's starting to feel a little off. I don't trust it. I get that one out, and that one's slotted to go out early in the spring, and it's going to grow all summer, and it's going to get cuts. And like right now, I got a Spartan Puke and I've got a Mac 1 out there, and we're going to get cuts off of those, and they're going to be nice and reinvigorated for the winter season.
You better have your IPM hat strapped on fairly firmly and know exactly what you're doing. That's a dangerous game, but I guess
Dude,
if
you're
it,
talking to somebody who takes his compost from outside and puts it on his plants inside.
I would never doubt Spartan Grown. I'm just saying for the listeners, if you're
For the
just your
average Joe out
the
there.
average Joe, that's exactly what I'm
Well,
saying.
true. Yes.
You won't
Buyer
find a
beware.
house
Point.
anywhere near his grow, but yeah, outdoor plants.
I will say the reason I gave the shout out to DJ Short is in 2002, he was writing about it on THC Farmer. And in 2004, he wrote it in his book. I think it's titled Cultivating Exceptional Cannabis. An Expert Breeder Shares His Secrets. And so at least 22 years, DJ Short has sort of espoused that as his go-to option for prior to tissue culture, even. At least like my awareness of tissue culture, he was saying that that was a way to reinvigorate his mother plants and even father plants, because he has like a male blueberry plant that it's like an F4 that he's been breeding with for like 20 or 30 years now. And each season when he puts it out, he says it reinvigorates it. And I think what Spartan maybe also didn't mention is I think you also keep one indoors as well. Like you keep that cut around anyway.
Oh yeah.
So you've got a indoor cut and you've got the outdoor cut, and you can kind of even see them side by side. And maybe at the end of that summer season, when you bring it back in, when it goes through the IPM protocol, maybe you can see some sort of change or difference or improvement in vigor or health or whatever the case may be.
I usually just make sure it lives, and then it replaces what's inside. It's just that's the SOP.
I see
I've
nothing wrong
never
with that.
seen it come in. I've never seen it come in and be a worse than the inside cut. I haven't seen that happen. I mean, if it was bad, like I wouldn't bring it in either. Like if I
You
went
haven't
out
had
and it
any
was
big
covered in,
outbreaks.
yeah, exactly. I wouldn't bring that in, but
It's interesting because on the like going back to the GG4 front or any plant really, like Doc mentioned he has now, and like Spartan mentioned in past shows, it's not a scientific study necessarily, but there's really good anecdotal reports when you have facilities that hit 30%, 35%, 32%, 33%, 34%. We're talking dozens and dozens of grows in a row. And then all of a sudden it starts hitting 17, 16, 15, 13, 12. Like, whoa, 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 what the fuck happened here?
Something changed.
Usually it's like, oh, that was right after the thrips came around, or right after the root aphids came around, or right after whatever. These pests, not only do they deal damage themselves, very often in certain cases, they actually carry pathogens. Like they're good at spreading things like hop latent viroid or other things. They get it in their mouth and they spread it from plant to plant. And so not only are they damaging the plant physically, like biting holes in it, I think even spider mites are one that can carry like up to 5 different things in their gut at the same time, and they use it to like break plants down. Maybe it's aphids. I think aphids are the ones that do that. But yeah, it's them because they make the dew or whatever, the honeydew or whatever. And ants can even husband them. There's all these crazy things that like you can learn about IPM, but pests carrying pathogens like that can really alter the DNA of the plant. So on top of like the shift from one grow to the next grow that we see in things like the grow off, there are actually changes that we're seeing. Like somebody's GG4 is better than your GG4 if you've got one that's like really old and shitty and beat up. Like I think the one that's cleaned up and tissue cultured and taken from the very top meristem and like the healthiest possible DNA and freshest stuff is going to come out a little bit better than the one that maybe you've had kicking around that you just barely keep alive in a solo cup and just like recut and recut and recut. And that one's probably better than the guy who had a spider mite outbreak in his commercial
well,
nursery or whatever. Like
I'm 50-50 on that. Maybe it's better then.
yeah, I think
It's
it's
different.
to be
It's definitely different. We can agree on that, but who knows which one's better?
when it's testing worse and like you're seeing like 30% versus 17%, and you're not getting like an increase in other stuff like terpenes. That's where I would argue
Well,
there's
yeah,
the
if we saw that
part of it is secondary metabolite production, THC even, which is a primary metabolite in cannabis. I think it's might be considered a secondary metabolite. I know terpenes are extremely difficult for the plant to produce. Like almost everything has to go right in a lot of senses. Like you have to have a good, healthy, if it's outdoor, a good sunny season early. It has to develop well. It has to, go through its bud development, and it has to uh, meet a lot of check boxes to get to the best of the best cannabis that most of us enjoy. If it's grown in a really shitty environment in a really shitty season, you're usually not going to have good cannabis out of it. And that's why a lot of people prefer indoor or a hybrid greenhouse with mixed light, or a place that has light depth where they can get seasons that are short enough where they're pulling the plants while the environment is still in ideal conditions for the plants to thrive. But yeah, it's just really interesting because the environment can really screw you, and pests and pathogens can screw you. There's so many different ways to kind of take your stuff from like a 10 to a 9 to an 8 to a 7 to a 6. And under the worst circumstances, like you're not going to see, especially like a lot, like if you are a new grower and you get a clone that has pests and stuff and you don't know how to deal with it, you barely keep it alive and you just get it to harvest or whatever. It's not going to be as good as if you get a one that's super clean and fresh and you grow it through with no issues, start to finish. And you'll see that once you have both of those experiences, and you'll understand like, hey, I'm not going to expect A grade stuff out of that plant that suffered through a really hot summer or that got eaten by spider mites for like the first half of the flower, but I ended up saving it with hypoaspis or whatever the Swarovski eyes or Californicus
But at
mites.
least let us honorable mention or asterisk that statement and say, but in some rare cases, that stress turns something on in that plant, and it's like, wow, what the hell was that? That was fucking crazy. Something I've never fucking experienced from that plant. It might be like almost a positive in that aspect that it's like a different high or a different terpene expression.
Fellow panelist Tao swears by that, and he has said so multiple times on this show. I tend to kind of lean the other way myself, but to each their own, and everybody's environment and strains and everything works different. I will say something, and I might have said this before, but I'm just shocked at how low people's standards are when it comes to cannabis nowadays. Like, I remember growing up, man, like people be like, "Oh, I got the buddy who's got the hookup, $50 and like eighth," and like you would think that's a turnoff. Oh hell no, people wanted that good weed. Now I went to a buddy's house and he's like, "Oh, look at this stuff I got for 70 an ounce." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're smoking that?" Like, I just don't understand it. But hey, man, like, maybe I'm spoiled, but I am just amazed at how low people's standards around me personally have gotten. I'm just like, wow, okay.
That's the work of the dispo, man. It's
No, I understand that. Of course, I understand that. How about this? They'll be like, "Oh,
And the
that's
work
like
of the bottom line.
that."
Gas
Oh
is
yeah,
more expensive.
oh yeah,
Everybody's dollar is being spread. You know,
dude.
if you don't
They're
have as
like,
much to spend, it's harder to pay more for the best shit.
they tried telling me, "Oh, they don't have good stuff." That I'm like, "Hey, I sent a picture. I'm like, I went and got my medical card renewed. I know that weed right there is good." Oh, so that's $40 an eighth. I'm like, that's what you people used to pay. Like, it's not like it was $80 an eighth. I'm just like, all right, man, if that's what you want to do. But
I
yeah,
saw
I
100 at the
understand.
high end. Was the highest eighth I saw was like $100.
Whoa, holy crap! But
So it was
hey,
like a
man,
limited drops groups, and they were selling out. That's the craziest shit of it
dude,
all. And I think
I
that's a hype train
understand.
thing. I think like 50, 60, maybe 70 at the high end for like the really ultra luxury brand stuff. But for the most part, it's gone down, down, down. I'm seeing more like 10, 20, $30 eighths in
Damn.
presentations than I am 40, 50, $60 stuff. But there is still um, stuff, a variety of price ranges. But I think it was interesting going to what you mentioned, Spartan. As much as I do agree with some, the potential is real. Every single variety is kind of unique, and every single interaction with the pest, when it happens, how bad it happened, etc., can make it either turn on stuff in a good or a bad way. One group in Canada felt that they had a thrips outbreak, and that variety tested much better than it had before or after. So they were telling all their buddies in the community, and I think Miss Nudie Grows is the one who let me in on this secret. Oh, guys, if you have thrips, just don't even worry about it. The plant tests higher in THC and
That was
terpenes.
probably
Oh my
like, let's
God.
trace that. Let's do some investigation. That goes back to a beneficial insector. Like we need to tell
Or
people
just
that they're
anti-competitive business
you know?
practice. Like, let's troll you into letting thrips.
I worked with a grower that tolerated spider mites in their mom room because they thought that you can't grow the highest potency cannabis without at least a little bit of spider mites.
Someone got to him. They had some consultant or some
My
internet.
actual thought was the guy couldn't get rid of the spider mites, and that's what he was telling the owner to keep his job because
Rationalization.
it was like, what? I mean, there was webbing in the mom room. Okay. You're cloning off of that.
It's
So
insane what we can justify to maybe cover our butts. or just try and explain away, like bury our heads in the sand. We don't want to believe. I've seen people be like, "Oh man, look how frosty these plants are," and then people are like, "No, dude, that's mold. That's like powdery mildew." It's like some people just don't want to see it, or maybe they don't know what it is until they've seen it at least one time. And at least we can try and be helpful and educational and say like, "Hey, actually, let's look at that a little bit closer. And here are these things. Like here's Botrytis cinerea. Here's you know a gray mold. Here's a white powdery mildew, and here are different things that can happen to cannabis that you have to worry about because you know." Until you get exposed to it, nobody, for the most part that I've talked to in growing, goes and looks up random plant diseases. Like unless you're really, really deep into the cultivation side of things, like and you figure out you heard about IPM or maybe some IPM specialist comes onto a show and then you dig a little bit more deeply into it and what are the common ones in cannabis? How can I fight them? What can I prepare with? Blah blah blah. But most people that I talk to are just interested in how can I keep my plant alive? What do I give it? Am I giving it too much? Am I giving it too little? Like when do I give it to it? How do I keep my environment dialed in? Like what happens when this happens? Blah blah blah. And so thinking about IPM is sort of on the back burner for a lot of people until it's on their front doorstep. And then they're like, oh no, I have bugs in my grow at Sink Angel. What is this? And then he says, oh, these are spider mites. And here's how you deal with it. Here's my video to the pest primer or whatever. So it can be difficult, but to motivate yourself, I guess, to learn about IPM. But at the same time, sometimes we have to just learn through our experiences.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's always like a more on the constant forefront with the commercial spaces because you have so much on the line that like if you're not thinking about IPM, like there can be millions of dollars on the line. And if you just like let it all go to being spiderwebbed in the mom room, like you're pushing back operations
Right.
months or losing thousands or millions of dollars.
And when you scale up a garden like that and you're running it 24/7, 365, and you're creating these environments, these regions of refuge for the bugs, like you gotta think in like northern climates, right, Jack? Not in San Diego, but like in northern climates where bugs are big in the summer. And you create a perfect environment for them in the summer, and then it starts getting colder and colder. Well, you still have the perfect environment, like it's so much easier to get infected when you have so many more people coming in and out of these facilities. The plants are always there. You're growing the whole year round, and you become a region of refuge for the bugs in the fall when they like, need to move someplace and it's getting colder anyplace else. So every commercial facility deals with things that most home growers probably never have to deal with. Most home growers never get infected with spider mites. Like every commercial facility will get infected with spider mites if they don't really take actions to prevent it. White powdery mildew. Like most home growers aren't growing in a situation where or they're able to manage their climate or they're doing something just wrong. Most commercial facilities, even when they're pretty tight on their climate control parameters, there's just so many plants and so many pockets and so many places that you end up dealing with these issues that a lot of home growers never deal with. So you become more sensitive to it, I think, because they keep happening. I never dealt with rice root aphids as a home grower, or thrips for that matter, or spider mites for that matter. And these are just like such common things to have to deal with in larger scale grows. So yeah,
The only
that was
time I've
one of the
ever seen
interesting.
it was when I got cuts from a commercial nursery. Both
Yeah,
the times that I did that, they had one time it was simple. It was fungus gnats, which is like not the worst thing in the world, really easy to take care of, to be honest. The other thing I got was spider mites that were fucking nightmares. I'm so happy I quarantined these things for 14 days. I sprayed them with Dr. Zymes. They swam through that stuff like it was a massage oil. Like they were just loving it. Like it was sudsy. And I was like, how are these? Like it's like all
yeah.
over them. And they're just living in it and just reproducing and rewebbing the plant. And I also used the Lost Coast plant therapy, and that didn't work. I should have hit him with sulfur. But by the time those two products didn't work, he admitted, oh, yeah, I've had that problem for a while. And I actually used those two products. So they might be a little resistant to them. I was like, oh, man, fuck this. I don't need that
Yeah.
cut that bad.
Super mites,
Yeah.
and it happens, and that's what it is too. Is I have a buddy who just recently got thrips, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I got this fogger, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that," and he literally just started over again. I even told him, like, bro, after 6 months or however long, 2 months, I don't even remember how long he told me, but yeah, it can be brutal, man, when you get something
Yeah.
that's resistant.
Yeah. For spider mites, the only thing that I'll go after them with at this point is wettable sulfur. That's not true. I'll use beneficials. I'll go after them with well, Californicus really, I think, does the best job, to be perfectly honest with you, of the
I like
beneficials,
persimmon.
especially at mop-up duty.
Yeah, I
Is that
like
Spartan?
Persimmilus. I like Persimmilus too, really a lot for that.
Persimmons do great at knocking down the population, but they'll
Yeah.
never drive it to zero because Persimmilus only feed on spider mites. So once they've gotten the spider mite population down low enough, the Persimmilus might start dying off because they
Yeah.
don't have enough food. Benefit of the Californicus mites is the Californicus mites will eat other things, but they prefer to eat spider mites. So they'll hang out in the garden when you get to those lower levels. So I agree with you, Spartan. If you have a bad infestation, I'd hit them hard with Persimmilus. But then when you get that down
Clean
a
up.
little bit, I don't think the Persimmilus will ever get you to zero but the Californicus can get you down to zero. But
And I've
yeah,
noticed the Californicus seem to do better in the warmer temperatures. So
Which is
now
what you
that
want in the grow
everybody's
space.
pretty much switched over to LED and warmer temperatures, those Californicus are going to
yeah, they just stay there. And if you have problems with sort of recurrent infestations, like it's getting into your facility, into your grow from someplace, you can just keep Californicus mites. And as soon as like a spider mite makes its way in there, like the Californicus will find it and eat it, and it won't become a problem. Persimmilus mites won't. You can't. You have to have a bunch of spider mites in the room in order for them to be effectively deployed. But sulfur, and if you're buying clones in from someplace else, or from commercial facilities, I would sulfur dunk them and then quarantine them. Yeah.
So my barber, when I taught him how to grow for his first time, he got clones from a spot that had spider mites, and he didn't know because they didn't really start showing up until flower. And he got them like his big teens, and he basically just flipped them immediately because they would have overgrown his tent. And so within like the first few weeks, I was like, "Oh man, you have spider mites! Like, let's try and take care of this." And he got himself Lost Coast plant therapy, or maybe I just gave him some. And he was using barbecue skewers, like little shish kebab, like the bamboo skewers, and he was soaking
Sure.
those in Lost Coast plant therapy, and then he would use that to remove the webbing from the plants because he only had like a little, 2x4 tent, right? It wasn't a huge space. He only had 4 plants. Maybe it was 4x4, 4x3, whatever. And when he removed all the webs, he had went in after the fact, like a day or two later, and dropped a huge, like what would have been a 16 square, like a 100 square foot Californicus dose for that 16 square feet, and they absolutely cleaned house. Like there was not a spider mite to be found ever again in that grow for years to come. And like he got to harvest, and 3 of the 4 plants were really incredibly still good. It didn't do enough damage to the fact that like they still yielded and smelled good and smoked good. One of them had a really, and it could have been the plant itself, but I smoked the plant from other places and it didn't have this effect. It was like a Wi-Fi OG, and this one just tasted like dirty motor oil in like the worst way. And like usually Wi-Fi OG is kind of like gassy and has a little bit more of like a earthy undertone, but it's not so dirty motor oily. But and even the plant itself, when we were trimming it, it had like a greasiness to the stems. It was a weird thing. That was the one negative thing that we saw after that. But the Californicus absolutely made it so he could get his first harvest out of those plants. Like he didn't want to let them go, and started clean fresh after that. But they were very effective. And when we looked at the environments, it was like, oh, this is perfect for what we're shooting for anyway. Like they coexist in the environment that we want. The temperatures and humidities are what we're aiming for. So
So in chat, Fried Piper's sharing that Suzanne, the bug lady, that's Wainwright Evans, I believe. She likes Epi Shield and Sulfoil X Monterey Horticultural Oil. I've heard good things about both those products. So I would assume those work great as well.
Brandon has used the Sulfoil X before, and I know other people have used the Monterey Horticulture Oil. I think
Sulfoil
that's a
X is
similar
so
product.
gross. I use that at the commercials.
It's thick.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, the oil is like oil. It looks like a white oil. What the fuck? I guess it's soybean oil, but it's just, yeah. That was my least favorite thing to do was spraying. I hated that because you gotta get like the PPE that you gotta wear. It's just ridiculous. Like all of the stuff
It's
over
smart though.
together.
I mean,
Well,
we
yeah,
need people to wear that stuff.
you got to do it. It's just
It's worth your health.
Not fun.
It sucks though, but it's worth it. Like my
I
buddy
wouldn't
works in
do
a
that
lead
job.
mine and he has to wear a bunch of PPE, but when he was like he had a big beard and he had to end up shaving it off because if his mask didn't fit properly, like you could see the part per million or billion in his blood going up much quicker than it was supposed to. So same in a grow environment if you're not wearing masks in the right area when you're spraying stuff, especially. But even like trimming, there's been a couple of deaths in like poorly ventilated trim areas because just the amount of micro contaminants and stuff in the air, like the small particles flinging around. It's fun for hash if you're like smoking it, but if you're in there 8 hours a day, 6 days a week or something like that, and you're just inhaling small particles, it can really fuck your lungs up, especially if you're compromised immune system or something like that, or just don't have a perfect health. And even if you do, you should be in a better ventilated area with some sort of PPE, ideally, if you're kind of in that level of trim labor where you're doing it literally for 8 hour shifts.
One of the most
multiple days a
dangerous
week.
things we do for that too is mix potting soil, mix potting media, especially with perlite. Perlite is a really high silica content and leads to silicosis. It's rock dust in your lungs that is a really brutal way to go. So yeah, there's a few things to be careful with as home growers. I think that from my perspective, there are some pesticides certainly, but that's a big one that gets overlooked is the rock dust from mixing various forms of potting soil.
Whenever I'm doing amending, I like to have at the very minimum like a gator over my nose and mouth because just cutting down the physical, like you might not see it in like a dimly lit room. Where I'm at now, there's like some natural light that comes in, and when like the sun's shining really hard, you'll see any amount of dust in the air, and like it takes very little to throw a bunch of dust in the air. Going back to the cats, even just petting my cats, another reason to have a tent to shut all that stuff out is as soon as you start petting them, the hair just flies. I have their Maine Coon Persian that triple coat cats that literally just are constantly shedding and needing to be brushed every day. But if you even just with like your bare hand pet them, it's just like hair and like animal dander, skin cells or whatever, which is effectively becomes dust flying through the air. And you might not notice it at night or in the early morning, but like middle of the day when the sun is beaming through and you hit that little spot of light, like any little, even just like scooping a litter box or something like that, you can see dust coming out of there. And so preventing that from being inhaled by yourself or getting onto your plants is a major sort of thing. And surprisingly, even a lot of commercial facilities don't have good separation between like they're repotting plants right over there and then they're trimming like in the same room or in the very next room where like people are walking from one to the other and like dragging dirt from their shoes into the room where like people are like setting plants on the ground and like picking them back up and like trimming them again. It's like these little SOPs are easy to overlook and then start to have your TYM numbers skyrocket and then you're forced into remediation and you're forced to, take these measures when you could have cut down at least. And then not to say that the TYM are perfect, but I like the California model where they're looking for the dangerous stuff where it can actually cause harm to the end user. But even then, there's a lot of steps along the way that even at your home grow, like we're going to take to make our plant the best, right? But at the commercial scale, they don't necessarily care as much about the end user or the plant or the product like we would. We have the time to care as much as we want about every single plant. We can trim every little leaf. A lot of them are using machine trimmers, right? Like we can do it exactly how we want to do it. One of the things I wrote down earlier that I kind of wanted to bring up is Tao, in one of his instances, it was either a landlord thing or maybe there was like a severe weather thing coming. He had to chop down his plant at like day 35. And he had one guy come over and like they smoked it together and he loved it so much he bought all of it. And he just absolutely loved the shit. Day 35, not like a mathematician, but that's not a typical harvest cycle, 9 weeks or whatever. So it's a short window for even a fast finishing plant. Like days
It's under
50.
6 weeks.
Yeah, so like days 50 to 60, I think are early finishers, I would say. And like 70s are like on the late side for what I would say like a modern cannabis variety is finishing in. Like 63 days is 9 weeks. And so a lot of stuff, I think people are trying to find stuff that finishes at the latest at that for the homegrown scale. I think like 9 to 10 weeks home growers are okay with. Commercial scale, they're looking for like 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever they can get it done in. But I'm curious, like with that whole, whether it's due to pests, whether it's due to preference, have you guys ever had to do a super early harvest for whatever reason, like a day 35, or what's the earliest you've ever actually harvested a plant? And I'll pass it to Doc first.
And tried to keep it, I
And
guess.
smoked it. Like a smokable plant.
Like from my home grow, I mean, I've had to lose gardens. I a couple of years ago, I moved and had to. I tried moving my plants, and then it just wasn't. It's not that I wasn't stable enough, and I needed to move again, and it just became more trouble than they were worth, like that sort of thing. But I didn't try to save them. I would probably make butter out of those plants or do something like that. I probably wouldn't try to smoke them if they were like that early. The other thought I have is like 35 days from flip, if that's how we're counting, rather than flip days. That first week, the plant is still basically vegging. It's going to transition. And then you got like 2 weeks of the bolt or the stretch. So now you're on like day 21, and the plant is just sort of starting to put its energy into its flowers. So you got like 2 weeks of that plant putting energy into its flowers. If you have, when we breed strains to be faster flowering, we're breeding them to transition faster, to bolt faster, and to enter the real flower fattening period on like day 14 instead of day 21. And some part of the speeding up of the process happens there. So by the day 35, it's at least had like 3 weeks in that instead of just like 2 weeks. So I think that makes a difference on sort of how long it actually stays in that process. But no, I don't think anywhere near that early, Jack. I would say probably from my personal grow, it's been closer to 8 weeks before I've really harvested anything. I grew a couple of strains that were supposed to be done in 7, and they just weren't.
I think that's some breeder, at least for a little while, that was like a breeder marketing tool trying to
Yeah.
sell people on like a faster finishing strain. Say it finishes in 6 to 7 weeks, and then if it finishes in 7, 8, 9, or whatever, like they'll blame it on the grower a lot of time. Oh, it would have finished faster if you were a better grower, blah blah blah. Or fucking it finished in my environment, or maybe I preferred it that, there's so many
Right.
different little excuses you can make. And so a lot of people were more likely to buy a strain if it said it finished in 5 to 6 or 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 than if it said 9 to 10 or 10 to 11 or 10 to 12 or like some of the hazes that say 16 weeks or 16 to
Right.
22. And
The
so
thing is, this isn't like an avocado that pretty much everybody knows when an avocado is not ripe, and then like when it is ripe, like nobody can damn well agree. And even any of us are going to come up with different things about when is cannabis ripe. And we're the ones that sorry, probably should have strong opinions on this. Like it's not clear. So the breeder can always argue just like, oh, well, it was ripe, and you did, and it was ready, but you chose to grow it longer. Like it's not like it starts rotting at that point or become notably different even. For what it's worth on the cultivation side, I think that harvest timing is one of the things that we understand about cannabis plants the least.
if you
Um,
look at the mountains, they literally let it go to they don't even care about the plant. They'll let it literally go to rot because they're going to turn it into hash. They have these like plants on the snow-topped mountains. They're literally like covered in snow and they're browned out, but they're completely bone dry. And then they bring them in and dry sift them because they don't care about the plant material. They're not smoking the plant material. They're just removing the resin from it. And that actually makes it easier for them. And I guess that's the traditional way it's done in a few ways in like the Hindu mountains, the Hindu Kush mountains. I pulled up a post on the
right now, that may be generally in extensive forms of agriculture. So extensive means you can throw a lot of land at this problem and relatively little labor. Then you don't usually care about wasting some of the plant matter or wasting some of the yield because you're looking at the ratio more carefully of harvest per time invested in the harvest as opposed to harvest per land invested in the harvest. Most of the way we tend to think about it as intensive farmers is in terms of maximizing return to space as opposed to maximizing return to time. Both are important in a commercial sense, but they still like to think in terms of, how much we're harvesting per room or whatever. I think in real extensive traditional agricultural systems, it's more about how do we make the best use of our time. And we can throw a lot of land at this problem. And if we get everything off of every plant, that doesn't matter. Getting so many more plants is what matters.
Absolutely. It's especially limited space, limited plant counts. We want to maximize as much as possible in the home grow
Right.
setting. We're not on top of a mountain in most cases, growing a field for hash from our
Yeah, just have a whole
traditional.
countryside to plant in, right?
Yeah, like, and everybody in your mountainside was doing it. Like Humboldt County for a little while was like that in certain areas or whatever, but it's even there they were growing it for flour and they're chopping it down at a time that picked sort of arbitrarily by the grower. And I say sort of arbitrarily because to them, to their endocannabinoid system, and for whatever reason they choose, maybe it's economically related, but if they're actually growing it with the intent of like, I want to make the best cannabis possible, and I'm going to try and harvest it at what some people are like, it's day 63. Some people are like, it's day 70. My one buddy who gave me the cherry pie, he goes, it's really good at 9 weeks, but it's really good if you take it 10 weeks. So I took it 10 weeks. I wasn't in a rush and it was fucking really good. Like I loved it. And so I always took it, up to close to 70 days, maybe 68, maybe 65, maybe 70, but usually pushed it past that 63. I wasn't like in a huge rush to chop it down. And it was more of a sedative strain. And I think that it benefit a little bit from riding a little longer. It wasn't a huge yielder. So a few extra days added a little extra weight on it. And I was usually only growing on like one plant of it because it was cherry pie. It was something I would literally get knocked out by in like the first bowl or two in 30 minutes. So you can't have a ton of that around. Otherwise, you're not going to get a ton of stuff done. And so, yeah, you kind of learn to moderate with that kind of stuff. But it's uh, harvest times are so subjective because what I might love is so different than what you might love because maybe you don't want to go to sleep, so you're not going to take the cherry pie to 10 weeks. You're going to take it to 7 because you just like that cherry flavor and you don't want the gassiness to start creeping in. With like Velvet Punch, for example, I bred it to F2 from my buddy Vegan Dojo who gave it to me as F1 and took it to F3. And each time I kind of saw the later and later you push it, the less candy flavor was there. It has like a really strong watermelon candy or a really strong grape candy flavor up front, week 7, 8, 9. And if you push past 9, it goes into like fuel, gas, leather, wine grape, more sophisticated aromas. It wasn't just that kind of like purple punchy flavor. So if you wanted that purple punchy flavor and you were looking for that candy, then you were better off to harvest it earlier. Even if you got a little bit less, it was going to taste way sweeter on the palate. If you didn't want
Yeah.
just gas and kind of leather and pine and just more complexity to it. So yeah, it's harvest
I
times are
think that
interesting.
it's one of the huge advantages we have as home growers. And it's really one of the points that we can be artisanal about how we're creating cannabis. We can grow strains that have different effects at longer flowering times. And we can play around with that kind of thing. Commercial growers can't be interested in that. We're interested in 8-week harvest schedules. Basically, from the time you flip to the time you harvest, we want that to be able to be done in 8 weeks. And faster than that is usually not super desirable because you want to line up your rooms, you want to be able to grow more than one strain. Commercial growers, it depends on the market. I've definitely worked with commercial growers in California. It's the only place that I've worked with growers where they grow only one strain. I worked with a grower that their entire facility, they only ever grew one strain. But they worked with a pretty big network of distributors that they had a market. The distributor always wanted to buy it at a pretty good premium price on this one strain that they produced, and it wasn't going into it. In most markets, the growers need to be able to market 4 to 10 different strains to the dispensaries that they're selling out to. And they want all those strains to grow on the same damn harvest schedule. Like you need them all to line up. It just makes operations so much simpler. And they'll test, they'll run some strains slightly different lengths or whatever. But if those strains are coming out with good testing numbers on day 64, they're going to harvest them on the day 64. every time. And that's one thing that we can do differently. I'll also say I know there's a difference between a strain harvested on day 64 and a day harvested on like day 77, right? Like 11 weeks in. You know, if and what am I saying? That's day 56. I'm sorry, not day 64. My math was a little bit off in my brain there. But you go like 10, 11 weeks on some strains, like Jack's saying, like it totally changes the effect. Being able to grow some of those strains that just take longer, you'll never find those, at least you'll never find them grown the way they were meant to be grown in dispensaries. So it's a huge advantage we have. It's how we make an artisanal craft. And I think that, yeah, be aware of that, but also know that nobody knows the right answer. And somebody comes at you with a whole bunch of science about it's the color of the trichomes, or it's the angle of the hairs, or it's some specific number of days. The only reason it's a specific number of days is to stay on a production schedule.
It's funny, Spartan's holding up GMO right now, and that was I wrote down in the Zoom chat, GMO 78 days to 82 days is two different days that I know my home grow friends that grow that to that level. I've had good GMO concentrate in the commercial market. I've never had good GMO flour that like I can get from my buddies who take it 78 to 82 days, right? Those like 12 weekers. Like I know a couple guys in Michigan are big. I know basically the whole Spartan and his crew over there were kind of like the garlic house for a little bit because they were doing so many GMO crosses and burger crosses and things like that. So
Yeah, that
you
was
can probably
my
speak to
kind of
that.
answer to you. I was going to use as kind of a cop out, but like when you said, harvested it early. Well, I harvested GMO early before, but that was still fucking week 9. But yeah, GMO is so much better if you you get her at week 11, right? Day 77, that's our day. We like to harvest her on day 77.
And so that like puts you as a third touch point in the 77 plus day range because I said 78 and 82 were other ones, and now it's 77. And a lot of people are coming to that same conclusion. And the plant itself just it looks really good around that time when you see how it develops, and it smells undeniable. I mean, that is one of I think the most cutting through like the hype stuff in the modern market where it just really it's so instantaneous, GMO, going back to the Mamiko seeds or whatever, garlic cookies. But Larry, Skunk House Genetics found what is called GMO, that phenotype of it, and it's just so strong, the aroma. It really has a very intense garlic, like forward note. And I can smell it when it's bred into stuff. Like I love the Donny Burger because it has a lot of GMO in there, and that one finishes way faster. So that goes to the point of like I think intentional breeding can actually make cannabis way better. Like GMO finishes at 78 days, Donny Burger finishes in like 9 weeks, and it is still very close. It's got a bunch of that garlickiness, but it comes with a little bit of gas, and like I think even more punch. To me, flower for flower, like I think Donny Burger hits harder than GMO. And GMO takes 78 days. Donny Burger takes 63, which is a good argument for shout out to Skunk House. He doesn't even sell these seeds anymore. They're not even available. But the Donny Burger variety, which was a GMO back cross with a Larry OG F8 male
God,
as
why would
the
he not make it? I wish he would make it. He would make so much money. He
I
needs to
know.
release those seeds.
Re-release, do a redrop, dude. Keep dropping them. Do all the burger crosses. I'll keep on buying and growing them. I loved Donny. I bought a pack and grew it out and had a great pheno. My buddy still has his pheno that's still better than my pheno ever was. So didn't have luck with the second half of my pack. I didn't preserve my seeds as well as I should have. They got a little bit warmer than they should have, and I also think my germination techniques weren't perfect. But do you have any thoughts on the GMO, Doc? Have you had much hands-on or smoke experience with the GMO?
A little bit. I think it grows pretty weird. The cuts that I've had, and dealt with, it's a weird little bizarre plant. It's hard to do training protocols for growers that grow it because it doesn't grow like other plants. I like it. I mean, no, I don't know. It's not at the top, very top of my list in terms of my favorite strains, but I like it. I mean, I think it's an excellent strain.
It is unwieldy in the way that it grows. It's huge. It gets massive and it grows kind of vigorously. Like it gets just giant and everywhere, like speary type colas too.
Yeah, and if you prune it too much, it's just hard to maximize yield off of it. And it took us a while to sort of dial in how to prune it, what kind of planting density, and how to kind of approach GMO at a commercial scale. I also think, like you're saying, it may not be a good choice for a grow that wants to harvest on day 56. Um,
Especially when there's other
and I think
options
yeah, I
at
haven't
this
grown
point.
it in a home grow situation, so I haven't sort of gotten to play around with it in that context.
And I feel like Spartan's got a really good perspective because he's grown it kind of Mitten Canico at a commercial scale, and then you have like a upscaled from a normal home grow with the trichome forage, which is like home grow, but like with you and Baked Pone have come together and made like your own little operation over there, which is more commercial style, but just two home growers that are super passionate growing the killer of whatever you want. And maybe you can talk about the difference between growing it at scale at Mitten Canico versus growing it at the trichome forage, and if you've ever grown it in your home grow.
Yeah, I haven't really grown at my home grow. I'm like like Dr. Coco. I'm with GMO for me, it's like the flavor I don't enjoy. It's the high that I enjoy. So I love the high, but I don't like the big savory, whatever you want to call it. Um, but I do like it once you start mixing gas in. So the Donny Burger and the different burger lines I'm more interested in than the GMO itself. But since my buddy Big Pone is a GMO, like I used to say, we are still growing crosses of GMO, and yeah, we have a lot to get through for sure. So, so I don't think
He
that's
was a
ever
seed
going to
collector
stop.
too, so he has like all
Yeah,
of them. Like every GMO
yeah,
cross that ever decided to happen. I
and there's a
loved
lot.
watching videos of him going through his seed packs because it's just like I'm like, oh my God, Big Pone had no restraint in buying seed packs. He got all of them, like all the seeds. So shout out to Big Pone.
Yeah, we just took down some of that GMO, and th those are just some of the, we take some of the tops to dry, just so we have flour, and then the rest of it's all going to concentrate. But we also took down some disco fries, which was able to share some of the Vark He's saying he liked that in chat a lot. And which reminds me, I need to talk to Baked about that cut. Uh, but I would recommend anything from Skunk House that has a burger in the title. It's going to be funky. It's going to be gassy, probably, especially if he's got that Larry OG in it, which I think he did. He brought Larry OG when he did Donny Burger. Like Larry OG to GMO, I think is that cross.
Yep.
Yeah, that's such a good
Or that's
combo.
Han Solo Burger. Donnie Burger
Oh, that's Han
was
Solo Burger and then Donny.
you
Okay,
take the Han Solo and crossed it back to
to
GMO. So it's like a
GMO.
GMO back cross was the Donnie Burger. So two GMOs with the Larry OG F8 kind of mixed into it.
And that Han
Mm.
Solo Burger was like a staple at Mint Canico, and I'm sure they probably are still running it now. But that was hugely popular out here. A lot of people like that one.
Did you guys do any of the pure GMO at Mincanico?
Yeah, yeah, but that was we ran like 77 days there, and that's not exactly what Dr. Coco's saying is that throws there's 7 flower rooms. So, now you have one flower room that's like 2 weeks off of this other one and
Yeah.
everything. And it's just like it really screws everything up. So yeah, it just doesn't fit in. If everything grew that way, then yeah, that'd be great. It's just it doesn't fit in, and there's not a market out there yet built. We're not pointing fingers one way or the other for that to support, a special circumstance, right? Just to grow this strain.
Like New
Unless
York
you
had
give more money
haze
for it.
for a while, like in the unregulated market, like New York had a lot of people growing haze, even though it was a longer, like the Washington Heights haze or the PIF, a few different varieties that were, you know, much longer than your typical commercial varieties. And so they became extremely popular there, though. And just like Doc was saying, with some of these commercial facilities that grow just one strain, if you've got a distribution network and everybody wants it, these people were lined up like pre-buying the pounds, right? Like they're like, as much as you can grow, we'll buy it all, right? So like when you have that kind of situation, it certain strains really do command level
Little
of
hard
attention.
to add. Yeah, but if you think we're running 10 tight weeks in a grow room, and that's with an 8-week flowering strain and 2 weeks in a veg in place, which is you got to do that someplace. So you're thinking 10 weeks, and now you're adding 2 weeks to get to a 70-day harvest. That's 20% more investment in that strain. You better be able to command a 30% higher price point, the same yield in order to even start making that make sense. But like Spartan's saying, you got 7 grow rooms, 5 to 7 grow rooms that are sharing a dry room, and no commercial facility makes a dry space per grow room. They're all sort of sharing a dry space, and you've got to coordinate that. Like you can't have multiple crops going into this a few days apart. You need time to load it, dry that crop, get it out, get the new crop in there. And that becomes a big pinch point. You can't have some one room just finished out of cycle, because then it's not dried in time for the next room to be harvested, and you create this log jam that would happen there. So yeah, you're usually locked into production, or you're not running efficiently. And grow rooms that do that, then they don't have a harvest for 2 weeks. It's like you can never make that up. You can only have a harvest like every 10 days max because of the dry space room in there. So if you miss a week, you basically never get that back. You can just try to get back on a tighter schedule, but you can't then harvest 2 rooms quickly later or something.
Yeah, essentially, you look at a dry room that's empty as wasted. Oh, I just wasted that time. I could have had
Right.
plants dry in here.
That's the
But
beauty
then
of
you end up
the
with flower rooms that are empty for some period of time because you can't replant it, right? We got to wait and get it all back in cycle, and it throws a big wrench in the thing. So really, I mean, most of the clients I work with, I come in to optimize their grow situations and get them so they're running more efficiently. And that's the big one. Like you need to get on schedule, you need to stay on schedule, you need to figure out how to grow strains that we can harvest on schedule, and start turning this out so that we're not getting all and then slowing down and having 7 grow rooms but only having plants in 3 of them, which is what happens when you end up not being on schedule.
that's where the beauty of the artisanal and like home grower and craft comes in. We can offer that thing that's never going to be available. And like Bohemian Chemists is a group my wife used to work with. They're a Northern California group, and they don't make their money in the cannabis space. They have like a hotel, like a trip type situation. That's where their money is coming from. And so they can afford to lose money in the cannabis market, if that makes sense. So they just grow whatever they like the most. And they did the adult use market for a while, but they're transitioning back to the medical market now because they have such a kind of niche in very high THCV cultivars, and they're growing like rare African varieties that like nobody else is growing, and they're taking them super long times, and they're growing in a super interesting climate that brings out expressions. And there's one other group, I can't think of the name right now, but they're also doing like these rare African varieties and stuff like that, and they're outdoor, which makes it the economies of scale a lot easier. But still, they're not getting, you know, double the amount if it yields half the amount, right? So like if somebody is also like, there's these grows in Santa Barbara that just are pumping out the whatever the most popular strain is as much as they can get. And then like you've got these little craft grows that are doing like the THCV rich African strain that's going to yield like way less, and they have like way less plants and way less space. So like their economies of scale are way worse. So it costs them more to produce it, and they're trying to get more for it back for it. And it's a very difficult proposition. So a lot of them, from a business standpoint, it doesn't make sense. So that's where, from like the passionate home grower or the person who's going to target just the medical market, like I think once export happens, it'll help a little bit when you can start to have these people like identifying the different cannabinoids. Like, I really love THCV. My wife works with a group now where I have access to THCV through a variety of products. But for a long time, I hunted the flower like viciously because I loved it so much and it was such a benefit to my life. And it was very rare. But now it's become a little bit commoditized, and you can get it in beverages or gummies or whatever, which is very nice. I like it in that too, but I also like it in flower. So it's nice to have both options available. And for people that gummies don't work for them for whatever reason, or drinks don't work for them for whatever reason, they maybe need to take the flower. Maybe vaping it is the best way, or smoking it, or eating it some other way, or getting it in however they need to from the whole flower product, RSO, whatever. It's nice that there are outlets, at least for, they're not going for maximum profit. They're dedicating their whole entire grows now to the medical markets. And I think they're going to be like the sativa, THCV, like more uplifting, more on that side of things, like the harder stuff to find, but in a really good quality,
I
because
really hope that they do well, because often the case is the opposite of that, is when somebody tries to take a medical approach and the rec side completely crushes it. Like here in Michigan, just the medical dispensaries are getting crushed by the recreational dispensaries because the only super benefit to the medical side was you didn't have to pay the excise tax of $10 or 10%, way more than $10, 10%. On the rec side, you do. Well, if you most rec dispos now are, you go in there and you have a medical card, they'll waive the 10%, they'll eat it just to keep you there as a customer. And so why, they have a bigger selection because there's less stringent testing. And so all the medical people are just going into the rec dispensaries thinking that it's all the same quality and all that. So the medical dispos are just slowly fading, dying, and because they can't sell rec, they only can sell their, medical.
They need to be kept alive by educated consumers that are demanding their product and are willing to pay a premium price to
Yes.
get it. And they like a small operation that's chasing these non-economic cultivars. They're going to need to demand a premium price, and they're going to need to sort of find their niche market, and the niche market will need to support them. But yeah, because everything you say is true, Spartan and Jack.
I'm
Like,
also a little bit inspired because craft is still alive, at least in the California market in some sense. There's this brand out here. It started in Las Vegas, but they're a California group. It's called CVX, Cannabiotics, and they have selected and bred a lot of their own varieties. They have a flagship strain called Cereal Milk, and this is like Glass Jar Ace. They can retail for as much as like $50 to $60 depending on the shop you go to. My wife got this one like on sale for like less than 30 or something because it was old for their standards, which was like 2 months. Some shops have like a freshness, like if it's older than 3 months, they won't even take it. My wife, as a seller, had run into that a lot. Like anything that's older than 3 months, shops will not accept, or they're only going to buy it like 50% off or more discount. And the fact that this brand in California, which is a fairly competitive market, with a huge unregulated market that's still competing against it, is able to like be selling out this particular variety. Cereal Milk is what we got, but they have a bunch of cereal milk crosses. They, I think, have figured out like a few things. One, strong branding. Like they have a good, everything looks good, it feels good, whatever. Like all the things that are done right are being done right. But at the end of the day, if it just had fancy packaging and a nice name, you wouldn't buy it twice. And what is special about this, as somebody who grows my own and has had access to some of the best cannabis, I think, in the whole world from some of you guys and some growers here in California, myself at times when I get dial everything in. But it stands up there with the best of the best. And to do that in the commercial space is like really impressive. But I think it's because it comes down to the genetics. Like they've hunted really good strains that have a really interesting expression. Like the cereal milk actually tastes like milk. It's got a very creamy, milky, like delicious kind of sweetness to it. And a lot of stuff like Cookies brand, I think, has a cereal milk. It's a completely different variety, and it does not taste like that. It doesn't taste like the name. So like this lives up to the name, and so do all of their other crosses. Like they just do a damn good job. So I'm inspired to see that they're out there still, seemingly crushing it. Because if you're selling out all your product within the first 2 months, I'd imagine you're selling it at a profit margin, and ideally, hopefully, they're not just doing what a lot of big companies have to do, which is sell stuff at a loss for a number of years until they establish market share, and then they can slowly dial prices back up. But from what I understand, I actually don't think that's the case. I think that they're all doing what they're supposed to do as a typical business.
Yeah.
So hats
All
off
I
to
know
you.
is that what Spartan said is exactly what happened to every dispensary around here, every medical one. And when you get your medical card to grow, in order to grow 15 plants, you have to go actually, ironically, into a dispensary to register your card. And you're registered into a database. You don't have to do it. You can still grow 6 plants, but if you want 15, you have to do it. So I have to do it every single year. I've had to do it like maybe 7 times. And the last few times I went in there, the guy is very keen to exactly what Spartan said. Oh, well, you can use your medical card here for 20% off. Let me show you which ones qualify and what our best deals are. And I'm like, no. I'm a grower. I don't need to worry about any of this stuff. But that is definitely an angle, and it put pretty much 99, if not 100% of all medical dispensaries in Washington State out of business because they do that exact same thing. And my son, he got his medical card, and last night, 4th of July, he was bragging to my other son, yeah, I got my medical card, and now I've already saved like $60 just in excess tax. Like it's 20% off you get from that card. Oh, and he got his card. I got it from like the big medical marijuana place. I've been going there for 15 years. So I get my card. They charged me $130. He got his for 100, maybe no 90, and he didn't even have to go there. He did like a 10-minute Zoom meeting. They sent him the
Yeah,
card.
Online.
Dude, I was just like,
There's a lot of those
damn.
420 recs
So-
now. You can get them online.
I got a 70. I think it's 75 or 90. I can't remember. 75
You
or
can get
90.
them as cheap as 40 here.
All
do
I
that
know
Zoom-
is that
to do that
it's
Zoom
definitely
call, and it's 2
designed
years.
to
It's
do
good for 2
exactly what
years.
Spartan said. It's definitely that's the whole. I immediately recognize that. Oh, they're just trying to make sure that the medical dispensaries have absolutely zero chance. So it's kind of funny to I've been observing this just the last couple weeks. So
I hate to
It's
say
too
it. I
bad.
think
Although I want to comment on something that Fried Piper brought up in here. He's like, I think part of the problem is people can't afford a premium product. They'd buy it if they could. I think my big point is as home growers, you can grow a premium product for not really much more than you'd invest in your standard product. You can grow things that really can't be found in dispensaries, aren't available on the commercial market because they're not economic for growers to grow on the commercial market. And it is nice to support the medical market and the commercial growers that are sort of going after those non-economic strains, but you would have to pay a premium price to support them. I think as home growers, we can choose to grow whatever we want to grow. We can experiment with different harvest lengths, with different sort of, cumulative amounts of light that the plants get. To think about going for different effects, like Jack, I think was bringing up at the very beginning about sort of how long you want to grow out these strains and get different effects.
you just hit on
think
the head of why I do the show, and like I would encourage everybody listening to what you just said to take that exact advice and grow your own. I mean, that's the way it is, really.
we can do things, we can do it better than they're gonna do it on the commercial side because it's just not economic to do it that way on the commercial side. And so you're never gonna get those really good strains at decent prices there. You're gonna get strains that can hit mid 30% THCs and 2 to 3% terpenes with only 8 weeks in flower, and that can sort of consistently turn out yield. I mean, that's what it matters on the commercial side in almost every market. What matters for home growers absolutely is like, how does this particular strain, how does it affect me at different times? How does it treat my symptoms or give me the best possible experience? That's what we can do. And it's a beautiful thing that we can do it. And we can get the highest quality cannabis that exists on the planet out of a grow tent in our closet in our bedroom, you know what I mean? Without telling our roommates, we just have to climb into the closet and harvest the cannabis.
That's the
inside.
strongest case for homegrown, in my opinion, is the medicinal value
Yep.
of the cannabis. It's just like it's going to give you the highest medicinal value, and once it gives you the ability, which I think is one of the most fun things about growing cannabis, is to search through, find the one that does fix your whatever, A, B, C, and D.
Ah.
And then when you find that, guess what? You can grow it again. Try to do
Take
that
notes,
at
grow it
dispo.
again.
Try to do that at a
Dated
dispo. Find
harvested this
something you
time.
actually
If you change
like
light,
and go back and get it. It's not
a
like
week
gonna
later, a
have-
month later, a year later, never.
Yeah.
Like maybe a month, but never a year. They never, the new flavor of the month with dispensaries. That was a big problem for me as a patient. When I liked something like the cherry pie, I bought an eighth. And then I went back and I bought every single gram they had. This was in the medical days. They had big jars and they'd weigh it out deli style. And I bought like the 2-3 ounces of it, literally all of the rest of it, because I loved it so much. It gave me sleep when I couldn't sleep. And so for a while, I actually didn't understand or believe. I guess maybe I was like too humble or not a good enough grower or didn't believe. Like I thought maybe I liked it because it was my own shit. That the home grow, like I thought it was better, but I was always holding like dispensary stuff as like a higher quality or like commercial. I thought the facilities, they have more money invested. They have these big warehouses and all these fancy lights and all this different. And it's like, wait, you can actually, like I was getting shit on from people on Instagram that had like a grow room and they'd shit on me for being a tent grower or whatever. And like this is way back when I first started growing on Instagram. And I'm like, man, maybe like what I'm doing is not as good or special. But then the more I did it, the more I realized, wait, it's way better. I can dial it in exactly to me. Like there's no possible way any dispensary could cater to me. I could breed it for my own head. I could take two strains, cross them together because I like both of them, and then hunt through a variety of their children and find the one that I like the most that leans one way or the other way. And I've done this
Right.
before. And it's like, oh, I picked more towards the mom that I liked, or I picked more towards the dad that I was trying to express. It's like, good luck doing anything. You just there's no possible way to do that. And then like to be able to say like I like it at 7 weeks or 8 weeks with an herbs now, I can cut down a branch at 7 weeks, at 8 weeks, at 9 weeks, at 10 weeks. So I got a full 4, week expression from one single plant through a pheno hunt each time I do it. And you get to say, oh, well, I actually really surprisingly like that one at 7. I like that one at 9. I like that one at 10. And you can just figure it out for yourself. Where at the dispensary, it's like, do you have Blue Dream? No. Okay. Do you have a Blue Dream Cross? Yeah, maybe over here. It's like, what
Well-
other, things do you have? It's like, do you have something in the wheelhouse? Do you have anything blueberry? Anything haze? Like, you have
And
to kind of hunt
ironically,
through.
you're going to get it for probably cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
$1 to $2 a gram to grow for yourself is usually what I calculate for most like home growers to do it for themselves. Once they get set up, like the first grow, it usually costs a little bit more, but it's usually still less than you're paying at a shop. And then after that, once you pay off the investment, you got your tent and your light and your fans. I mean, that point forward, it's like $1 or $2 a gram just for the electrical costs, the nutrients, the soil, whatever you need to put in. But that's really affordable for the dankest weed on the planet.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge benefit for home grow. It's the reason that we should home grow. Like, if you want to make your own beer, like you might be able to make pretty good beer, but I'm sorry, like the commercial beers that are available, especially in the microbrew scene, are like pretty good. And I've never had anybody's homebrew beer that tasted better than some of like the microbrew beers that were available in the area. Like, I know somebody that brews or that distills his own whiskey, and maybe sometime he'll make a batch that's drinkable. But so far it's been pretty rough. But like cannabis, man, as a home grower, you can absolutely grow the best cannabis that exists on the planet. And with the democratization of a lot of the equipment now, that the LED lighting and really being able to dial in a full PPFD environment in a grow tent without massive sort of HVAC systems is amazing. And you're able to do really cool things with it. So yeah.
And I just want to say, it's not like it sounds like we're going down on dispo stuff, but you can be a home grower. One of my favorite things about what going into a dispo would be is like you can go into a dispo and be like, I've never heard of that strain. What the hell is that? Let me look at that. Maybe I'll try that. Oh, it tastes okay. I bet you if I grew to be 100 times better, now I'm going to go search that strain and grow it myself, without you having to grow it. Maybe you could sample right now, relatively cheap, at least here in Michigan. You could sample probably 10, 15 strains and get an idea of where to go next if you're looking to grow a new strain. But, it's not going to be the best representation of the strain, probably not.
I
But
got to
it'll
shout
give you an
out
idea.
Giraffe P from Bakery Genetics because I said that I liked the strain, and then all of a sudden somebody must have told the breeder because the breeder followed me. So shout out to Bakery Genetics. But I said that I like this strain Giraffe P or Giraffe Pussy, and I like looked into the cross, and I didn't know either cross. So I had to like look 2 generations into to figure out what the genetics were. But it was like all stuff that I kind of liked, and even from a dispensary, it was really good. So like if that is available in seed, that might be something that I'd want to grow because it was like holy shit, like of the dispensary stuff. I get a lot of free stuff because the nature of my wife's business. And so I just try it as it comes through just out of curiosity. And like you're saying, I just like to know what's the new thing. How does that taste? What does permanent marker taste like? What does toad venom taste like? What does the runts taste like? It's like, is pink runts really different than the regular runts? Or like, does it matter? Sometimes it does. Shockingly. Sometimes it's just relabeled, rebagged by a dispensary somewhere. So you really have to do some investigative work there on the consumer front. But when you grow your own, you can get it from a reputable seed bank, and the seed bank carries stuff from reputable breeders. And then you can figure out like, oh, this guy DJ Short's been writing books about this stuff since 2002. Like, granted, I think DJ Short, no hate on DJ. Somebody out there might hear this and think that I'm being a hater, but for the introductory grower, I actually think his stuff is a little bit more for like breeding tools and like very specific. Like, it's not going to be what a lot of this modern stuff is in terms of yield and in terms of modern potency. If you've been smoking modern cannabis for a while, it's more of a like headier highs and like flavor chasing and like not huge yielders and not rapid onsets. Where a lot of the stuff today, like it hits you right away and really hard. His stuff might be like more of like a slow creeper and like more of a subtle high. I really enjoy them, but I think that stuff that has his stuff in it, like Blue Dream, for example, is DJ Short's Blueberry crossed to the Santa Cruz Haze. And so you get a little bit of that haze and a little bit of that blueberry together. And to me, that is like one of my favorite strains of all time. And even derivatives of it, like Blue Dream crosses or blueberry crosses in general, like other blueberry crosses I've had have been fantastic. But I like the blueberry crosses more than I like the blueberry, and similar with purple punch. I like a lot of purple punch crosses more than I like the pure purple punch because I think a lot of them punch it up, like a do-si-do cross the purple punch makes it a little bit more gassy, just like earlier with the Donny Burger. Not that I hate grape and sweet kind of candiness, and purple punch actually has a little bit of fuel. There's some Larry OG in that, but I think it's Larry OG to Grande de Purple, if I remember correctly. And so it's an interesting strain. If grown well, it's very good, but I think it's one of those that crosses better than maybe it's grown. Interestingly enough, for whatever reason, like it passes on. It's good genetics, maybe even better. I think some varieties and even animals are like this, right? Like maybe a horse goes on to breed a bunch of award-winning horses, but it itself wasn't the award winner. And then people spend millions and millions of dollars to get the show pony that like won the Triple Crown, and then that thing never breeds a single one that ends up being a champion because it just
Absolutely
doesn't work.
true. In other areas of seed breeding, with the parent lines are not the productive lines. They're often really runty little plants. They just, when you cross the right ones, they create absolute fire. So yeah, that's true. I wanted to circle back to that comment about dispensaries too. I definitely am not sort of anti-dispensary or even anti-commercial cannabis. I mean, I am glad that there's a market there. A lot of people don't have the option to grow their own and don't have the interest in growing their own or whatever. They should still have access to clean and reliable cannabis. Coming up, I always bought cannabis on the black market. I was a consultant that works in both the regulated market and the unregulated market. I'll just say I will not smoke black market cannabis anymore. I like every grower that I've worked with that isn't regulated does things that I wouldn't want to put in my body. I tell them that. Most of them care more about solving their problems, which is like eliminating their white powdery mildew problem, and they're using like Eagle 20 or something like that. And you just never know. So if you don't have the option of getting cannabis, you're growing it yourself. Unless you know the person that's growing your cannabis and you trust the person and what they're using on their crop, there's a lot of products out there that are really detrimental to your health that are commonly used in black and gray market cannabis cultivations. I've seen it. I've seen it by people that know that they shouldn't be doing this on products that people are going to go on to smoke. So take that for what it's worth. At least when you buy it in a dispensary, it's been tested to not have most of those things on it.
And there's active
A
recalls.
little bit different, but what's that?
There's active recalls in California. I see
Yeah.
regularly if and when something gets snuck through, if and when something pops. There's not only the California DCC is doing this, but there's independent journalists that will go and buy 300 vape products and then send them to an independent lab
Test it.
and then have
Yeah.
them tested for all the pesticides that are on the list. And they'll say these 10 passed, but the other 300 failed or whatever. And in the legal market, it's much, much, much better. The illicit market, it was like 0% passed, like Doc is saying. They're all using something. They're all doing something. If they're
Yeah,
not
and
like
they're
a
all
home grower who's
contaminated.
doing it for themselves, if they're not smoking it themselves, if they're not doing it like because they are a passionate like Noah the grower right here in his garage, wherever he's at, doing his thing with his plants,
Right,
he's not
that's
spraying
not
it.
Hawaii.
Noah's weed. I
I'm
know
growing in
Noah, so
Hawaii.
that's a different
Right.
situation, right?
100%.
Yeah. Listen, the thing about it though is I did share quite a while back with that same thing. Maybe the article you're referencing, Jack, but yeah. I also know some people that work for testing places that do shady procedures. So another point on growing your own, but I get it. Not everybody can. And but
Grow your own's
hopefully,
number one.
yeah, of course. Yeah, grow your own. That's the easiest way to know what your inputs and outputs outputs are.
And I will say not everyone can, but I also
That's
know
pretty
like
simple.
2 different people that are blind
Sure.
that are cannabis growers and one person in a wheelchair. So even though it might seem very difficult or impractical or unachievable, there are people out there that are doing it that might
Yeah.
otherwise have never thought they could have. And
I
so
think a
you
lot of
might
it
be
comes down to
surprised.
living situation and not wanting to put your plants in a baby stroller and walk them around the park for 3 hours. You know,
Yeah.
like some people don't live in a situation where they can grow easily, and I get that, and they need still access to their medicine.
When I did my one appearance on Talking Shit with Eagle, I had literally just had my heel cut, moved over, and screwed back together, and I was on my little like cart thing. My brother-in-law came over, set up a ramp so that I could get from my my kitchen down in here, and wheeled right in here, did everything. And yeah, it was interesting.
It's amazing. I remember back, you were on this show when you were going through the surgery, when you were on the scooter. You had like the one knee up and you would push around almost like you had like the 2 handlebar type thing. You could scoot around the grow. And you took care of business in there, man. That's a respect to being able to keep not just any garden going. You got a fairly large in terms of what the home grower would be
Hey,
considered.
did you get to keep that thing? I would keep using that in the grow.
Dude, I did keep it, and then recently, a friend of mine's mom. I have a really cool little craftsman school.
Oh yeah, those are sick. We got
Yeah,
those.
that's the second one that I've gone through with that. But it's funny you say that because I kept the ramp. I still have the ramp there because instead of having that big step down, and my wife's like, "Are we taking that ramp down?" I'm like, "No." So, and before I got the scooter, like the first couple days, I came out here on crutches.
Dude, you're
So
ADA compliant now, Noah.
yeah, well, I mean, dude, I'm legally disabled, so but yeah, I no excuses, and I have a friend who lives up by Seattle who is completely blind. I'm talking like he tripped like maybe like a year ago, and like he walks the blind stick, and he like fell and broke his arm, and he's completely blind, and he grows. So
That's what
yes,
I'm
it can be
saying.
done.
It seems unbelievable, but that's the
Right.
third person I know of now. And like all of them are legally blind and like it's just like that to me seems so improbable, but to see that they're able to overcome that just it encourages me, and it encourages me to encourage more people to keep growing because like not to say that if you don't have an ailment that it should be some sort of like easy thing, right? We all have our challenges and our difficulties, and there might be 100 different reasons that you can't get to it right away. But when you have that opportunity, it's not this monumental thing. It can be as easy as popping a little seed into a little cup of soil, and then a few days later you got a sprout, and then you are off to the races with reading what do I need next, light or whatever. Maybe you just throw it outside or have a little fun with it. It doesn't have to get super serious. But that said, we got about a couple minutes left. I'm gonna pass it over to my guests for their final thoughts and shout outs before we close it down tonight, starting with Dr. MJ.
Hey guys, it's been a blast. I'm enjoying doing the show. Glad I'm back with you. You guys can check me out on my YouTube channel, Dr. MJ Coco. I have drmjcoco.com is my professional consulting website, and cocoforcannabis.com is my home growers website. I do the Ask Dr. Coco show every week. I missed it last week. So if you guys come to the Ask Dr. Coco show, sorry I wasn't there last week. I will be there this week. It's Wednesday. You can find that out on Patreon. I'm Dr. MJ Coco on Patreon too. Thanks, Jack, for hosting. Wonderful show. Rest of the panelists, Spartan, Noah, you guys are awesome. Glad to be back with you.
Happy to have you back for a second week in a row. It wasn't just like a special guest popping in. We've got 2 weeks in a row now. So you're again you deserving of the being in the little information below the posts where I got Dr. MJ's info. That if you didn't hear it necessarily, or if you want to go back and look, I've got it all written down, as well as Spartan, Noah, and the panelists who don't make it tonight, like Tao and others. But I'm gonna pass it next to Spartan Grown.
Thank you, Jack. I want to shout out Aaron the Grower. I was looking for a red, white, and blue shirt today for happy birthday to America too. So it happened that it was the Aaron the Grower shirt, so I thought that was just double cool. Um, and then shout out everybody who watches the show, especially the people who support me at Grandmaster LEDs. We got our very first load uh, come in at the new warehouse, and I got that unloaded on Friday. So all the back orders of the orders that people have ordered should be shipping out. Well, I'll be working on it on Monday here tomorrow, getting all that stuff shipped out. So everybody who's got an order has been waiting for that load. It's finally here, and we got one more load waiting in customs. Once that's through, and I get that thing, we should be able to ship out all the back orders, and I appreciate your patience. Much love, everybody. Keep growing.
Hey, being back ordered is a good problem to have. You guys are keeping busy. People want your stuff, and you guys are getting it out there as soon as possible. I know sometimes with shipping when you manufacture things overseas, it can take a little bit of time, but people will get their grows up and going, and exciting stuff there. And I'm glad that you're able to get more people growing. Lights are a big part of it, right? And Dr. MJ did a huge amount of work doing light testing for a long time. We got a lot of people into their lights, and now you're in that space now, Spartan Growing, getting people lights, and that's a huge, huge part of the grow. So I'm happy you guys are getting good stuff out there for the people to grow dank plants with. And last and certainly not least, we've got Noah the Grower.
Yeah, I had a great time as always. Always learned something. A lot of fun doing it. I recently got my account suspended, and so like I was looking at it, I was like Googling my name to see what would come up, and my account, and it said some of those like we missed Noah the Grower today, and I thought that was cool. And eventually I'm gonna make a backup account. Hopefully I don't do anything crazy. And dude, I searched something. I'll tell you guys offline what I searched. It had nothing to do with cannabis, but I know that's why I got my account merged. But on Instagram, but whatever. I'm Noah the Grower. I'll see everybody next week.
Cheers, Noah. Always a pleasure to have you. And I'm glad that you got your account back. It's always a bummer whenever an account gets deleted. A lot of the history of cannabis has been deleted, and that's why I wrote 50 strains of green, and I'm trying to finish up formatting 50 strains of purple, because a lot of these accounts that I, source these images from for the strains are no longer there. So the images deleted, they don't even have backups. And so I'm glad that it's memorialized in a sense in 50 strains of green, and some will also be in 50 strains of purple, because so many accounts have been deleted and sometimes people don't get them back. And so it's a problem that we have. So I'm at Jack Greenstock as my main account on Instagram. Jack_Greenstock is my backup account where I've posted nothing, but I follow a bunch of people and follow back a bunch of people there. So that way I have some form of communication, because I don't have like a lot of your guys' phone numbers, and I don't like have a lot of your guys' emails. So like people that I would talk to like pretty regularly, like Gromies from the community that would reach out to me like on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, or even people on this panel, I would be disconnected from. Now, thankfully, like this happened enough that I was like, wait, we need to get each other's emails. So I'm like able to email the Zoom link to everybody. But it's a real issue. We're not in the clear yet with the legalities federally. And so the big social media networks want to cozy up to the big governments, and they'll do stuff like whack a bunch of our accounts to justify them getting a little bit more, praise or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't want to get into the politics of it all, but at the end of the day, we are the nail that gets the hammer a lot of the time. So be careful out there with your social medias, and try and be friendly to people online so that you can avoid getting reported. But sometimes you don't even have to do anything. There's just some craziness about it. Also, Jack_Greenstock on X, where I'll post this as soon as I can, usually tomorrow, Monday sometime, and I'll get this on the podcast platforms as well. So cheers, everybody. Keep growing, and growers love. Catch y'all next week.
Or love, everyone.
Keep growing.